Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is out on a media tour, but not the one he originally had planned. Schumer postponed his book tour due to security concerns, as members of his own party are turning their back on the New York Democrat who supported a GOP spending bill that averted a government shutdown last week, a resolution many progressives wanted him to vote against. Now Schumer is coming to America's television screens, and he is not backing down.
I knew it was a difficult choice, and I knew that I'd get a lot of criticism for my choice. But I felt as a leader I had to do it. If we cut off government spending, it would be devastation like we have never seen. If we ended up a shutdown 3 weeks from now, people would come to me and they'd say, they just cut off my Medicaid. They just got rid of my veterans benefits. Stop it. And I said, we can't, we're in a shutdown. And then they'd say to me, why did you let the shutdown happen?
The View co-host, Sonny Hostin, took Schumer to task.
It gives me no pleasure to say this to you because we are friends, but I think you and 9 other Democrats caved. I don't think you showed the fight that this party needs right now because you're playing with by a rule book where the other party has thrown that rule book away.
True.
And so in my view, what you did really was, in supporting that GOP partisan bill that Democrats had no input in, you cleared the way for Donald Trump and Elon Musk to gut Social Security, to gut Medicare, to gut Medicaid.
No one wants to fight more than me, and no one fights more than me. You got to fight smart. It is not true. That bill had far less it was bad. I hated it. But it does far less damage.
And here's how it went on CBS Morning.
There are people in your own party that are saying, look, it's time for you to go. They no longer trust your leadership. They want somebody else in there. What do you say about that?
Here's what I say.
In your own party saying
yes.
you've got to go.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm the best leader for the Senate. I am the best at keep winning Senate seats. I've done it in 2005. Just in 2020, no one thought we'd take back the Senate. Under my leadership, we took it.
I'm the best, he screams. So the minority leader still operating as if it's business as usual. It's not, however. Schumer's lack of understanding came through when he sat down with MSNBC's Chris Hayes last night. Let's watch.
Every day, we are hammering away at Trump. And we have a simple thought that unites the Democratic Party from one end to the other. He's asking the middle class to pay for tax cuts for the billionaires. It unites us all. Bernie Sanders likes it, and my most conservative members like it. We're hammering away at that. Today it was Medicaid. Tomorrow it's going to be, or in the next few days, it's going to be tariffs. His numbers have started to go down from 51 to 47. If we keep at it and keep at it and keep at it, his numbers will be much lower. He will not only be less popular, but less effective. Second, we will find the moments where we shouldn't give them votes. This worked in 2017. You say it didn't. Now it's a different government.
It's different, though. The difference to me between 2017 and now, and I've been at this desk for both of them.
It's different.
It is a full-fledged assault on the constitutional order that has not been seen again,
well, that's
certainly in my life.
So this is a theme we're returning to a number of times this week. Chuck Schumer, I think he's just not the man for the moment at all, and even people who should be allies, mainstream media figures, are not happy with him either. Now, there's a desire to have had him fight in a way that I don't know how it would have been productive to actually have the government shut down, but you seem to think that would have been deliver the activists what they actually wanted, so maybe it would have been a smarter course of action. He seems to think no, but I don't. And his record-winning Senate seats, how do we know a different leader wouldn't have been even more effective at that, right? He's losing more slowly than others. I don't know if that's a really inspiring achievement for the leader.
My problem has less to do with this one particular vote and more to do with the fact that these people put strategy before radical truth-telling. And I believe that right now, this idea of the economic argument, the fact that they are stealing from the poor and the middle class to give to the billionaires, this is the argument the Democratic Party should have been standing for decades. They're a little bit late to get to that. To me, the deeper issue is what this administration is doing to destroy the basic pillars of democracy itself and how that is connected to the economics. So that's the problem I have. You can tell, you like it, I don't. The fact that Trump just says whatever he thinks at the moment. I think,
Well, that's,
I don't want
didn't
to
we
put
just
words
talk
in
about
your mouth 'cause
radical
I hate it when you do it to me.
radical truth-telling? Didn't you
Well,
say
no,
that's a good thing?
well, people say they like it that he's authentic, but sometimes he's
Yeah.
just authentically such a jerk. That's the problem I have. But the Democrats have the opposite. You know, sometimes the Democrats, I remember in the 2000 election, Oprah Winfrey saying to me, you know, Marianne, you'd really like Al Gore off stage. He's, if you behind the scenes, you'd love him. And I'm like, that's supposed to make me feel better. I like people who, I don't like people who are jerks, but I like people who say what they believe based on the principles that they believe in. And it's for that reason that Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, to me, represent another moment. We need to be saying what is right now, because what is an assault, and I do believe most Democrats believe this, on the basic fundamental principles of American democracy. That's the problem, and I believe that if the majority of Americans, remember, unlike this canard about, oh, he won by such a landslide, he won 77 million votes, Kamala won 74 million. That's a 1% difference.
Yeah.
And millions
Close.
and millions and millions of Americans believe that what is at stake now is democracy itself. And to millions of us, that's a big, big deal. We don't want to see authoritarianism. We don't want to see dictatorship.
Well, it's close, but and it's a divided country. But Trump had a more impressive victory of his 3 elections. This
Yeah.
I mean, he lost the middle
Yeah,
one. This one
he
was
did.
a more impressive victory than the first
Yes,
one.
he did.
People have moved toward his direction. If you had, again, to go back to this David Shore analysis I talked about in my radar, if you'd had all registered voters vote, Trump would have won in an even greater landslide.
Perhaps.
It's the most politically obsessed, highly educated, affluent, and wealthy people who feel the way you do
Yeah.
about the threats to democracy and
Right.
how evil Trump is and how.
Right.
And that message is just not resonating with the rest of the country.
Well, I
the rest
get
of the
that.
country is
I
trended
get
toward
that.
him, including
But the
immigrants
fact-
and
I saw-
minorities and young people. And
I saw a quote by Tolstoy, I think it was Tolstoy, who said that the fact that a majority believe something that's not true still makes it untrue. I just believe the majority, the slight majority in this particular case, I don't agree with it. Listen, the majority didn't
and
agree
you
with
don't have to agree with it.
not only did the majority not agree at the time with desegregation of the American South, the majority didn't even think we should separate from England.
right, that's why I don't fetishize democracy to the same degree
I
you do.
know. That's the point,
I don't-
everybody, that I hope is made on this show. People such as Robby don't.
No, you're just providing
you know what?
examples of democracies
I
going
know.
haywire. Democracy, like a majority of people can decide that we should carve Robby up and eat him for dinner. That doesn't make it right. We have certain rights protected that are not subject to a debate or a discussion or a vote, and that's so. Democracy to me is just a tool for achieving greater individual freedom and prosperity. To the extent it is accomplishing that, and I agree that it generally is better at accomplishing those things than other systems. I'm not advocating us switch from a democracy to some other form of government. Democracy is the best form of government that we've come up with for securing our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I absolutely agree with that, but I see it as a means to an end,
Yeah.
and I don't even think you disagree with it.
Yeah.
It's not itself. I'm like, oh, democracy itself is so sacred. Freedom is sacred. Prosperity is sacred. Democracy itself is a tool. It's in our toolkit for achieving those things.
If you replace democracy with authoritarianism and dictatorship,
I agree. I don't want to.
that is a diminishment of
Yes.
freedom.
That will generally lead to much, much worse outcomes.
Thank
so,
you.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't
we
want
got
to
to
do
an
that.
agreement.
Well, but then we disagree on what authoritarianism is. I would describe Europe as increasingly authoritarian, and China as authoritarian, and Russia's
Well,
authoritarian.
China
Brazil's
is definitely a
authoritarian.
dictatorship.
Well, and Europe, they
And
order
Russia
around our
is
tech
definitely
companies. They say
dictatorship.
they don't believe in free
Turkey
speech.
is a dictatorship,
Yes.
and Hungary is a dictatorship.
Virtually everywhere else on the planet, other than the
Well,
U.S.
Europe, I do not
and
believe
like
that Europe is-
Iceland and New Zealand and
Yeah, but I don't agree with you about Europe. What the things that you see as increasingly authoritarian has to do with your views of their guardrails about free speech.
yeah,
and
why
so
is that
forth.
not authoritarian? To violate our most sacred right of all, our right to speak up and say ideas that maybe some people say are hateful, but the government doesn't get to determine that. Democracies don't get to determine that.
Yeah.
We exercise our free speech, and that's why I consider them increasingly authoritarian.
You know, many years ago, have you ever been to Anne Frank's house in Germany?
I have not. I've never been to Germany except for the airport.
It's very profound. And and when you are there, there's a museum at the end of it. And there's this really wonderful thing where you sit in a chair and you have these voting boxes next to you. And they talk about the fact that, she was in Holland, by the way, she wasn't in Germany, of course. But they talk about the fact that in Germany, for instance, it is against the law to spread Nazi literature. And after having been in Anne Frank's house, you were asked, what do you think is the better option? A government denying it, the possibility of that, because at that time they were talking about the fact that most Nazi literature in the world came out of Nebraska. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult for Americans voting. What do you actually think is better? Because, you know, if Hitler were alive today, he would be taking out 30-second ads on Facebook. And that's at least a very serious question for us.
No, I have to address that. You weren't on the show that day, but we interviewed, myself and Linda, who's been a co-host, we interviewed Nadine Strawson, former president of the American Civil Liberties Union, who said she has ancestors, parents, grandparents, people in her family who died, who were murdered in the Holocaust, and she said that she's the most pro-free speech person there is, but if she thought greater censorship would have kept her family alive, she would have absolutely been in favor of it. But, and here's the important thing, she says that there's no evidence that that's the case because, in fact, there was widespread censorship of Nazi ideas in Nazi Germany. Hitler himself went to prison. There was speech codes aimed at suppressing Nazi speech vigorously all over Germany, and they backfired. They made Nazi ideas seem, people are afraid to debate them and discuss them. It made it seem seductive and interesting to people. She thinks it completely backfired.
Let me ask you a question. What if there was a real trend on social media right now? White men, privileged white men who have been to college, such as yourself, just this sort of hate campaign against your particular demographic. How would you feel about that?
I would feel very negatively, but I would think the answer to that is to
More
address
truth,
it and to criticize it and how do we know, if we start setting limits on what people can say, how do we know that the people you're describing, the mongers of hate, well, what if they then occupy power and use those exact same rules to suppress your speech?
You know, number one, it's a legitimate conversation and a legitimate back and forth, and I appreciate that. Number two, the answer to lies is more truth, and the problem is that we have not had enough truth-telling in this country, and that's why the conversation of someone like James Tallarico is so important. I remember when I ran for president in 2020, and I don't know how this was in 24, but in 2020 there were 11 states in the United States that did not require even half a year of American civics, government, or history. And so if people are not told the importance of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and also ethics and character, if we're not having the conversations about things that matter, then darkness such as all these things, which absolutely are malevolent, have an easier time getting through. In the meantime,
I absolutely agree that schools should teach American history. I mean, they do teach American history.
No, many states do not require it. Pardon? And that's the problem. Many states do not require it. And now with what Trump is doing with this anti-DEI stuff.
I know there's some really bad schools out there, but basic American history education.
You and I had it. You were in Michigan. I was in Texas. We had it. Not every state has it. And now all the states that are told, we don't want you to teach about slavery. We don't want you to teach about...
No. They're not saying
you think it's not happening?
They're not saying that. We are absolutely teaching about slavery. No one is not teaching about slavery.
I hope people listening now
don't.
That's what you really believe, that they're not diminishing the conversation that needs to be had, that American children need to understand. You know, at the end, we were talking about Nazi Germany and World War II. At the end of World War II, and Germany did pay reparations to Jewish organizations, $89 billion. And one of the agreements made with Jewish organizations at the end of World War II in Germany was that students would be taught in perpetuity the history of the Holocaust. A country has to have an understanding of the mistakes that we have made in the past.
No one is saying don't teach the Holocaust or don't teach slavery. This is a significant part of our education.
Well, I just think you're, with all due respect, I think you're in a little bit of a la-la land about what's happening in some states in this country and the suppression. Pardon?
I think you're getting spin from progressive educational associations who want more money for teachers' unions, saying, "Oh yes, they're not going to teach slavery if you elect Republicans."
Oh,
then
that's
silly.
Not I've never heard anyone say they're not going to teach slavery.
What they are, I mean, if you're talking about the Florida efforts to change the curriculum, those were geared. They were going to remove pornographic books from libraries.
Pornographic books from libraries. Yes. I do not have a problem with removing pornographic books from libraries. I do have a problem with removing books from libraries, as they are trying to do. Some of these banned books have been things like To Kill a Mockingbird, the picture of Dorian Gray. It had a little bit of a hint of homosexual sex in it. They've removed the Grapes of Wrath. Thank you. Hello. So
They
some of
removed
this
the
banned
grapes-
book
Look,
stuff, they're removing
okay, but
some
this
of the
is what
great
this goes
pieces
back to malicious
of
compliance.
American literature.
We don't want those things taken out. That's not what the law is intended to do. It's malicious compliance then when the school administrator said, oh yeah, they said we have to take the Bluest Eye off the shelves. And no, they didn't say that. You're doing that to make it sound like they told you.
Robby, perhaps we could have a whole show here on what these banned books are and what's happening with banned books, and I hope we will next time I'm on here. Because that's just for you to think that they are not banning. And many
Taking
of
the
these
books off the library shelves that have explicit images of sexual content. That's what it was. Like drawings of like simulated.
So why do you think they're taking out Grapes of Wrath or To Kill a Mockingbird?
They're not. What I suspect is happening is that activist liberal educators are taking those things down and saying, "Oh yeah, they told us we couldn't teach this anymore." When no one intended that. No one intended that.
Yeah. Yes, we will have a segment about banned books on America next week because it's really important that we not buy into this idea everything's good, everything's not good. Some really dark things are happening in this country.
Next up, why Doge called on Washington, D.C. police to shutter the United States Institute of Peace. Stay tuned.